Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Blacklogic. I have quite a few news stories for you guys, as well as some updates. So let's jump right into it because former President Obama, condemned the Trump administration decision to freeze $2.3 billion in federal funds to Harvard University, labeling it an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to suppress academic freedom. The freeze followed Harvard's refusal to dismantle its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and to limit student protest rights. Obama praised Harvard for setting an example by resisting the pressure and maintaining an environment of the intellectual inquiry and mutual respects. President Donald Trump is within his right, President Obama, because he came into office and stated that any federal funded programs funding will be cut if they continue to have DEI programs. Now, if Harvard University drops their DEI program, then the federal funding from the Trump administration will start pouring in. But until then, they're going to have their funding to be cut nonetheless. And this is how it should be. Because when it comes to DEI, again, Black people are not benefiting from this. So having President Obama come out and speak up for Harvard University, the $2.3 billion that's being cut, may give the picture that Black folk are just going to Harvard in droves. No, there's strict requirements to even get into Harvard. And majority of the people who go to Harvard are legacy. Their family have been there. They don't even have some of them don't even have the grades, but everyone knows if you go to Harvard, you are guaranteed a high profile job making $150,000 or more. That's just what it is. Now, again, I could be speculating to a high degree, but Harvard degrees within itself, our Ivy League schools, Brown University, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, all these schools automatically are getting you a figure salary once you leave college. That's just the way it is. And Barack Obama is an alumni of Harvard University. He's not coming out saying, oh, the DEI really benefited minorities. It really benefited Hispanics and Blacks and Asians. No, we understand that the highest minority at Harvard was Asian. So again, DEI was benefiting Asian folk. It wasn't benefiting Black folks. So they're always trying to put a Black face as if Black people are getting benefited from Harvard University. Absolutely not. Any Black person that's attending Harvard, Yale, and all these Ivy Leagues probably worked their asses off to be there and didn't get into college because of DEI, because we don't have 5 Black people, so we got to have 5 Black people. Absolutely not. Just look at the roles, look at their SAT scores, look at their ACT scores. Okay. Those tests are not DEI programmed. They're not DEI constructed to have someone to have a better leg up, okay, a better step up than someone who's not a minority. So again, you can miss me with that, President Obama. He already stated what he was going to do, and guess what? He's doing it. Now, Mohsen Madawi, a Palestinian student and co-founder of Columbia University Palestinian Student Union, another Ivy League school when it comes to Columbia, he was detained by ICE agents during his naturalization interview in Vermont. Madawi, a legal permanent resident since 2015, legal permanent resident, but at the same time, he is a he is a Palestinian activist, but he was known for leading peaceful protests against the Gaza war. His attorneys argued that the detention was politically motivated retaliation for his activism and identity, labeling it unconstitutional. A federal judge has temporarily blocked his removal from the state. This the same thing that occurred with the other gentleman who was Palestinian. Now, he was on a student visa. This gentleman here is a legal resident since 2015. And as he was at his citizenship interview, ICE detained him. And again, no one is really watching these videos I'm producing, because if they did, if you are a legal resident, if you are a visa card holder, if you are illegal, whatever, do not do anything publicly in this country at this current time. That is my warning to you. Don't go to your citizenship interview. Try not to appear anywhere in person. Try to do everything electronically, because I'm going to tell you this. They have put many people on their radar, and they're just waiting for the opportunity to apprehend, to detain, and eventually deport you. And with this new information from President Donald Trump, no U.S. citizen is safe either. And a lot of you like, well, I'm going to be safe because of X, Y, and Z, ABC, 1, 2, 3. No U.S. citizen is safe after the remarks of Donald Trump. And we're going to get into that as well. But again, my stark warning to people who are not American citizens, take heed to what's going on. Pay attention to what's going on. Now, you may believe that you're doing this for the greater good of humanity and for the Palestinians or for people all in general. If you value your freedom, because you can do more, okay? You can do more when you're free versus trying to be a martyr just being in prison. It's not like they're going out and assassinating people. That's not what's occurring. You're just going to be in jail. You're going to be in prison. And the way it's looking, they're deporting everybody to CCOT, the El Salvadorian terrorism prison. The IRS has agreed to share, listen to this, the IRS has agreed to share personal data of illegal immigrants who are taxpayers with ICE, marking a significant shift from its traditional confidentiality stance. Under the agreement, ICE can request tax returns within the scope of criminal investigations. Critics argue that this move violates privacy laws and could discourage tax compliance among immigrant communities, potentially leading to a decrease of $9.5 billion a year in tax revenue. Now, the Democrats have been stating for a very long time that the illegal immigrants have been paying taxes. So illegal immigrants have had the opportunity to have legal jobs in America. And because they're legal jobs, automatically the U.S. government is taking out tax dollars. So now the IRS is allowing ICE to use information of people who are illegally in the country but working these legal jobs. They're allowing them access to their files. Is this constitutional? Is this the right thing to do? Or is this against our laws? In my opinion, okay, this is my conjecture, they should absolutely be granted every file on that illegal immigrant because they should have never got that job in the first place. And again, we should not only and solely going after people who are legally in the country. We need to be going after who hired them. They are the real culprits. They're the reason why all of these thousands of people from all these countries from around the world were flocking to the southern border and coming into America illegally. It's the business owners, the people who actually hired them. HR, whoever it may be. If you are hiring illegal immigrants, you already broke the law. Someone's not even illegally to the country and you're allowing them to work legally. So yes, I should have 100% access to their records because that's going to reveal a lot of information, where they live, where they work, addresses, numbers, bank accounts, because they're going to freeze their accounts. There's no doubt about it. When you're getting a tax return, they ask for your direct deposit. They ask for your home address. Some people want a hard check. Some people want it to be electronically deposited. That's what they're going to do. They're going to freeze your bank account. Okay, you're getting mail to your home. They're going to show up at your house. Or they know what your address is, and they're going to detain you. Oh, where are you going to put in a PO box? Then they're going to have someone that is basically reconning areas of the PO box and see what demographic of people are in and out and just stop and frisk. That's what we're coming to. Again, this is being more heightened than it ever has before. And again, I know a lot of you are for that. Now, I'm not for stop and frisk, but people who are legally in the country, whether they're paying taxes or not, because again, a lot of illegal immigrants are not paying taxes. Okay, they have benefited from our welfare state, Social Security, Medicaid, CHIP, SNAP, immigration programs that just pour out billions of dollars from the U.S. government that's utilizing legal citizens' tax dollars. So again, I am agreeing with that, but not the whole stop and frisk thing. I do not agree with that. Now, here's an update with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Now, the Trump administration confirmed that Kilmar, a Maryland man mistakenly deported to El Salvador, is alive and secure, but remains confined in the notorious Seacock prison in El Salvador. The Supreme Court has ordered the administration to facilitate his return to the U.S., acknowledging the deportation was illegally due to a withholding order forbidding his removal. Why is this man still there? I don't care if this man is white, Hispanic, Black, Asian. I'm looking at this in the bigger picture. Because in one of my next stories here, you're going to understand why this is important. He's a legal resident of the United States of America. That means that he has passed, he has went through background checks that, again, this is why he was afforded that legal status. And eventually, I'm pretty sure he was trying to become an American citizen. Now he's in a maximum security terrorism jail in El Salvador with no evidence stating that he was gang affiliated or committed any crimes. Now, as you see on your screen here, it states that this was just one of those examples of an individual that is a MS-13 gang member, multiple charges and encounters with the individuals here. Trafficking in his background was found with other MS-13 gang members, very dangerous person. And what the liberal left and fake news are doing to turn him into a media darling is sickening, said Secretary Noem. Okay, if that is true, because I've been calling for evidence for a very long time, because I'm not liberal media, I'm not even conservative media, I'm just trying to get down to the truth. And the only thing that we have to rely on are the words of our government and the words of our media. So we have to dissect and analyze, because again, they could put up his charges. A lot of these empty words don't mean anything, because have you noticed any other suspect, any other culprit, they put up their charge record. He was charged with this during this year. He was charged with this during that year. Where's his charge record? Let me just look through this. Let me before I put my foot in my mouth. Let me just see if they had no charge record. Not, at least not on Homeland Security, where you believe that they would have his charge record. I'm just asking for the evidence to support these claims. It says that the Supreme Court said that the district court order was unlawful and its main components were unlawful in reverse 9-0 anonymously, stating clearly that neither the Secretary of State, listen, or president could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in barbaric activities in the world. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you will move right away. So again, these are the allegations stating that because he is affiliated with MS-13, again, I'm just looking for the evidence that he's involved directly or indirectly with a lot of crimes and charges they have essentially against him. If that's true, then he needs to stay. He needs to serve his time. I think it's life in prison at this point. But if they don't have the evidence to support him, then they need to do the right thing, because the court has already ordered for him to come back. That is definitely my thoughts on that case. Again, I'm not stating that, oh, he should just be brought back. No, if they have the evidence, then of course he can stay. But until they get evidence, whether it be true or untrue, he needs to come back to the United States of America, number one, and he should go through due process. And if there's verifiable evidence, then they should send him back. I think it really is that simple. I think it really is that simple. Now, President Trump recently stated there is no rule of law. There's no rule of law. Expressing, okay, and this is something that he expressed, frustration over judicial decisions that have hindered his administration policies. Critics argue that such statements undermine the judiciary's independence and the constitutional balance of powers. Legal experts warn that this rhetoric could erode public trust in his legal institutions. He said there's no rule of law. Now, I'm just going to state a fact here. President Trump is a convicted felon who's serving as the 47th president. That's just the truth of the matter. Whether you're for or against Trump, MAGA or non-MAGA, I don't care. That's just the truth of the matter. But he said there's no rule of law. How? You're the president of the most powerful country in the world. You're literally controlling the world with tariffs. But you're a convicted felon. Over what, 30-something charges? Over 30-something charges, and you were on national TV each and every day stating how the media and the judicial process were treating you bad, but nonetheless, you still became president. And those charges mean nothing. It's like a black person wrongfully convicted for a crime serves his time in prison, but wrongfully convicted. There's been a lot of wrongfully convicted black people. Gets out of jail, applies for a job, has to check a box to state that there was a felon and never get that opportunity. Now, of course, a lot of people, when they're in jail, they better themselves. They get degrees, they get certifications. But even with his degrees, master's degree, PhD, he comes out, can't get a job. Even though he was wrongfully convicted and couldn't prove himself to be innocent because he's not a millionaire, he's not a billionaire. And this is one of a lot of reasons why a lot of black people are in jail. Are there black people in jail that committed crimes? Absolutely. And that's where they're supposed to be. Are there a lot of black people who were framed and who are innocent? Absolutely. That's why certain programs like the Innocent Project have freed a lot of black people, because guess what? That black person wasn't even in the country. He wasn't in the state. He wasn't on that street. DNA testing, later evidence come out. People start telling the truth, and then they're exonerated. But they've been in jail already 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Their whole life has passed them by behind bars. And they say, oh, yeah, we're going to give you $50,000. What I'm going to do with $50,000? I've been in jail for my entire life. Wrongfully convicted. Yes, black people is the #1 demographic in America that is wrongfully convicted. Wrongfully convicted. And you guys don't have to search far on the internet to see how other demographics of people literally frame and blame black people. You can be in an argument with someone who's not of the same complexion and hue and race, and they would say, oh, he hit me, she hit me. And without cell phone video footage and without body cameras, do you know how many more black people would be in jail unjustly? These are the questions that we absolutely need to raise. These are the questions, because this picture here is just staggering to me. Even President Bukele stated that he doesn't know how he can bring Kilmar Abrego back. It's out of my hands, he stated. There's nothing I can do about that now. But as I look at when he stated that there's no rule of law, that was just astonishing to me, because again, deportation laws even apply to non-citizens. When we look at illegal immigrants, green card holders, asylum seekers, they really, again, President Trump stated there's no rule of law and that U.S. citizens can be deported. Trump says he wants to imprison U.S. citizens in El Salvador. And U.S. citizens have an absolute right to remain in the country. The right is protected under the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. And if you guys don't recall, Supreme Court precedents such as Ephraim versus Russ, 1967, which stated that the government cannot forcibly remove citizenship or exile a citizen And that is what President Trump will be doing. He will be violating the Supreme Court precedent. He will be violating the 14th Amendment. You cannot forcibly remove citizenship or exile a citizen to another country. CCOT prison in El Salvador is intentionally criticized for inhumane conditions, no access to legal representation, lack of due process, torture allegations, etc. Because when you look at due process, there's two amendments, there's two constitutional amendments that come in mind, the 5th Amendment and the 14th Amendment. You can't just ship someone off to a foreign country without a trial, legal counsel, and constitutional protections. Because if the U.S. government attempted this, it would be a gross violation of the 5th Amendment right to due process and liberty. And that's why a lot of people are stating that America is soon becoming a dictatorship. As I was stating prior to how a lot of Black people have been wrongfully convicted for crimes they did not commit, and how we're the most exonerated group of people in America. Why do you believe that this story is now so important? Not just to Black people, it's very important to us, but it's very important to people altogether, being U.S. citizens. Why? Why did I ask that? Let me tell you why. Now, I want you guys to think about an uncle, a father, a cousin, a brother, a sister, an aunt, a mother that is wrongfully convicted of murder, which has happened many times in America. No matter what demographic, no matter what race you are wrongfully convicted of a vicious murder. And you have no evidence to prove yourself innocent. Because don't forget, they're supposed to prove you guilty without a reasonable doubt. But somehow people still end up in jail wrongfully convicted. So now you're in prison. And because you murdered someone, this is a violent crime. And because the partnership that we have with El Salvador, and Trump says he wants to imprison U.S. citizens in El Salvador, okay? Now you're on your way to CCOT prison. That easy. And it will not be easy for you to return. That's what they're stating. I want you guys to really think about that. Because what if El Salvador uses one of our amendments against us, like the 13th Amendment? Do you guys recall the 13th Amendment loophole? Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist, except as a punishment. So slavery is still legal in the United States of America when you become incarcerated. When you become incarcerated, you have no rights. And the exception, now you are a slave of the U.S. government, and they can use you as such. Because when we look at what a lot of these slaves in prison do, let's call them slaves. Because that is what the 13th Amendment stated. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except, okay, but as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, meaning that there's still slavery in America. And you're probably, well, if there's slavery in America, if you get incarcerated, what are these slaves doing? Well, they're making license plates. They're making furniture for government agencies, military gear and uniform, mattresses, metal fabrication, call centers. They run under programs like Unicor, which is Federal Prison Industries. And then prisoners are paid as little as 23 cents to $1.15 an hour. We're talking about cheap labor, cheap labor, slave labor. Because did you know in some jurisdictions, like in Louisiana, slaves were actually getting paid. So you can be a slave and still get paid, but they weren't getting paid. They were getting literally pennies on the dollar, 3 cents, 5 cents. But most slaves work for free. What about firefighting, especially in California? Prisoners, I can't even say the word now. People who are incarcerated are trained to fight wildfires, which they risk their lives for pennies per hour, often less than $2, and they're doing it again for their freedom. And here's another thing. What if you are wrongfully convicted in California and you're in jail for, let's say, 10 years, and you sign up to be one of these prisoner firefighters, and you die in a blazery death? And even though you were wrongfully convicted, you shouldn't even be there in the first place. Then many of these firefighters can't even become professional firefighters after release due to licensing laws. So you have all this training of being a firefighter, but then the laws say you can't be a firefighter because you was in prison, even though you was in prison being a firefighter. That is so contradictory. You was in prison being an entire firefighter. When you release the prison, you've been doing firefighting for 10 years in prison. Because of state laws, because of laws in general, it prevents you from being a firefighter. This is crazy. But there's other information when it comes to prisoners, aka slaves of the state. Private sector contracts with these prisons, because big name corporations like Victoria's Secret, Starbucks, Whole Foods, AT&T, and McDonald's have been tied to prison labor over the years. Inmates have done sewing, packaging, call center work, and even tech support. When we talk about medical and pharmaceutical support, in some cases, inmates are used for medical manufacturing, PPE assembly, or basic hospital cleaning during shortages like during COVID-19. Others are part of medical testing program, which opens a whole other can of bioethical worms being test subjects to the state. They also have state level labor projects, repairing public buildings, building roads, cleaning up natural disasters. Examples like Hurricane Katrina, because Louisiana used inmate labor for major recovery projects. And a lot of you are saying, well, they're in prison. What else are they going to do? They're just going to live off the tax dollars, even though a lot of these prisons, a lot of these private prisons make billions of dollars off of prisoners all the time. Here's the point I'm making. Let's say you committed the crime. Let's say you serve your time. Right? Do the crime, you do your time. You do your crime, you serve your time. You're making furniture, you're making license plates, you're cleaning up, doing disaster recovery. You get out of jail with all these skills, can't even get a job. You can't even get a job doing the same thing you've been doing in prison for the last 5 or 10 years. So guess what that has a lot of people who were incarcerated to do? Go and commit more crime. Where is the rehabilitation? Where is the rehabilitation? Because prisoners are used to build infrastructure for public housing, government facilities, and even the prison itself. They're often forced to work under extreme conditions without pay and under the watch of armed guards. After all these skills, the public works, infrastructures, engineering, they still can't get a job. Cleaning public streets, tourism zones, beaches, painting public buildings or schools. Because prisoners can be made to work in state-owned farms, which harvesting crops, raising livestock, or preparing food for state institutions. And here's another thing. President Bukele, which you're seeing on the screen here, left of Donald Trump, he has hinted at using labor to grow the his economy internally, basically turning prisoners into forced labor hubs. I knew this where it was going. I stated this a long time ago because President Boukele's vision includes expanding labor to create exports like textiles and small-scale manufacturing, likely through state-controlled enterprising. I want you guys to expect El Salvador to follow a sweep shop style model using inmate labor for profit. Yeah, it may be dressed up as rehabilitation, repayment, or public service, but underneath is a massive economic engine that preys on the powerless. This is modern day forced labor with a legal stamp, especially under authoritarian style leadership or in states obsessed with cutting budgets. And the reason why I hit on this so hard, is because being Black in America, being a Black American, being a foundational Black American, the one demographic of people who are wrongfully convicted, who have served decades inside of prisons where we didn't commit these crimes, could easily be deported to El Salvador and be part of these slave labor camps that they're going to start to utilize these prisoners to grow the economy of El Salvador. Look for El Salvador GDP to grow significantly over the next 5 to 10 years. You guys are going to remember this conversation. You're going to remember these statements, and you'll be like, damn, he was right. Hopefully, American citizens will not be deported to El Salvador. Hopefully, they will not be. Hopefully, there will be no American citizen, no matter your demographics and or race, that is wrongfully convicted and be sent to jail and then deported to El Salvador and then be put in slave labor camps. They don't have the same rules and laws as America. They have a prison full of hardened criminals that they're going to treat absolutely worse. Because again, if you're a hardened criminal, you rape, murder, kill, destroy. I don't have anything to speak of for people like that. Do with them as you please. But we've seen prisoners in America cleaning streets, making tags, furniture, all the things that I went over. Rightfully so. But if you serve your time and you're released from prison, you have all these skills, you have a degree, you've done all these trades, you fought fires, etc. But the same laws that put you in jail for you to be rehabilitated, first to punish you, then to rehabilitate you so you can be a viable citizen of America once you're released, instead of becoming a criminal again, is stopping you from the craftsmanship, the trade, the skills that you've learned in prison. They want to even allow you to exercise that so you can feed yourself, so you can shelter yourself. They won't allow it. There's a contradiction in America and everybody knows it. But because there's only a certain set or group of people that goes to jail, majority of Americans don't really talk about it. But after President Trump stated this, we should be really looking at this in a much larger, in a very large spectrum, because there's steps to this and is leading up to that as well. It's leading up to that very, very quickly. And I think we need to keep our eyes on this. We definitely need to keep our eyes on this. President Trump has intensified his focus on Canada, imposing steep tariffs and suggesting that the country could become the 51st state. And the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, was caught on a hot mic acknowledging that Trump's discussions about annexation are genuine, attributing the interest to Canada's valuable critical mineral resources. This is about money. This is about resources. Okay, you see the new prime minister there, but this is something that the previous prime minister, Justin Trudeau, he's the one you see on your screen here is the incoming one. Okay, this is the incoming prime minister. But this is still in the news. This is still heading the headline, so to speak. And we covered this. We covered this story yesterday, and this was the attack on Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro. His home was arson with 2 Molotov cocktails, and it stated that it believed to be an assassination attempt by a far left extremist, that highlights the growing trend of political violence in the U.S. Other incidents include attacks on Tesla properties, the New Mexico Republican headquarters, and increasing threats against public officials. Experts warn that both left and right-wing extremism are contributing to a dangerous escalation in political tensions. They have extremism all over the place in the U.S., and it's coming from the right and the left. So now the left can no longer state that all the white supremacy and extremism and national groups are on the right. For a very long time, Democrats, Dixiecrats, the party of slaves, the party of Jim Crow. We already knew this. This is not even news at this point. I have a video clip for you guys. I just want to know what's your thoughts on this particular video clip. Excuse me if I'm jumbling my words here, but I want to know your thoughts on this next video. I'd like to give you guys something at the end to reflect on. Sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's intriguing, but I definitely want to know what your thoughts on this. Leave it in the comment section.
Y'all can play dumb all you want to. You got Carmelo Anthony sitting down in Texas with a $1 million bond. But then you got a NICU nurse out of North Carolina that was breaking the bones of black babies. She's a serial bone breaker, a serial child abuser to kids, to black kids. And she gets a $25,000 bail. What is that? 10% of that? What's that? $2,500? See, y'all can play these little reindeer games and act like you don't see what's going on or act like it's not a big deal. Race has nothing to do with it. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to yourself. And I mean, granted, the child is on the live. Seems like an accident to me. I don't think it was intentional. You know what I mean? To be honest. And the evidence will show what happened. The truth will come out. But do you see what we're saying, though? A $25,000 bail for a NICU nurse that's in a damn hospital breaking the bones of premature black babies. She's out on bond, $25,000. Now, that boy got a $1 million bond. You don't see the difference? You don't see the difference of that Daniel Perry guy that choked that man that was mentally handicapped in the subway for 5 minutes? He claimed self-defense and got it. That black man, he was spewing out all type of stuff. I'm going to do this and do that. He didn't do that to anybody. But this guy want to be a hero, choke somebody for 5 minutes, self-defense. Trayvon Martin stalked down, stalked down. The police told him not to follow that young man. He followed them anyway and shot him. Stand your ground, self-defense. Man, get out of here with that bullshit. Stop acting like y'all don't see what's going on.